powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by AC Airport, American Airlines, and the Atlantic City International Airport. The airport now has your one-stop ticket to over 90 domestic and international destinations. Book your next trip today at AA.com. Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast. We talked a lot of Eagles in the last hour, and we were taking a look at, oddly enough, Adam, one of our topics today, as I kind of I said I woke up this morning, I had all these Eagles thoughts in my head. I don't know what it was. The day was kind of odd, and I was like, you know what, this, and this. And then I started to read some stuff, and we were talking about different guys who could possibly be breakout type of players, guys that could possibly be Pro Bowlers this year. There was an article I came across over at Sports Illustrated that listed 10 guys who can make their first Pro Bowl, and one Eagle made that list, and that was Haason Reddick, who made the list. And I was kind of like, that's interesting. And it just spun off a lot of Eagles thoughts here for guys who could have breakout years. So let's start with Reddick, because the reason they gave was really interesting about how Gannon will use them, the attention the tackles will get, all kind of contributing that they think Reddick maybe fits in Philadelphia better than he did in Arizona and in Carolina.
Well, Eagles are going to play a lot of 3-4. That's something we've heard since March. We still think that's actually, I'd say actually February was the first thing we heard. In fact, I think Mosher put something out before free agency that the Eagles had interest in him, and then we also, because we had heard that the big change, if you want to call it big, is they're going to play a lot more 3-4. They played a little bit last year, not very much, but they're going to play a lot more this season. Now, we don't know how much they're going to do out of every given game, the percentage-wise, but it's going to be a lot more. So Haason Reddick, to maximize his potential, he really needs to play as a stand-up pass rusher in the 34. That's really what his talking to Panthers people, that's why they thought he maximized his potential with them. They had interest in him, but they were not willing to go to the money that the Eagles were willing to do. When the Cardinals moved him to when outside as a stand-up pass rusher, he really was good, because if you remember, the Cardinals could not figure out what to do with him, Mike. They lined him up as an inside linebacker. He wasn't comfortable. They lined up outside, but they weren't having pass rush enough. And then his last year with the Cardinals, he blew it up, and he also did well with the Panthers. So, and I don't know how to call him a breakout player, because the list that I put together for our segment today, there's really guys who have not been there yet, who have not been a free agency, or have not been guys who have put together a huge season. But I would say this, though, on your point about how he could maybe take this game to the next level, if they just let him pass rush, which is what our Panthers people told us, not ask him to cover at all, he's going to be in double-digit sacks. I don't see any way, if he's healthy, that he doesn't do that, because as a very strong Panthers source told me, he plays with his he just plays with his hair on fire. That means he's a run-and-chase player. He's not a coverage player. So to answer your point here, he absolutely could have a big season, bigger than he's ever had.
Yeah, and I guess the interesting part about that would be, somebody texted in about Josh Sweat made the Pro Bowl, but I guess you told Josh something off the air, a little nugget behind that, a little behind-the-scenes conversation so Sweat made the Pro Bowl technically, but technically it doesn't count.
Yeah, if he was an alternate or if he was named as a replacement, he's not eligible for a bonus on his contract. The only way you're eligible for a bonus is if you were actually named originally, like you were voted in.
Gotcha.
So I don't think he was. You would have to check on that. I don't think he was named originally, because I know for a fact in his contract he has a Pro Bowl bonus. A lot of the Eagles players in their extensions, I had to look at them over the last couple of months. Our show, Mike, the show that we did that dropped Monday, we did offensive player contracts. We didn't do 100 of them. We just did selected ones, what they could look like next year. So you'll like that. And our Thursday show will be defensive players up for extension, what those contracts will look like comparatively to the other players who have got extensions already around the National Football League. It was a fun show. We got a lot of good comments on that. People seem to like that. But in terms of Reddick, he just if they're going to unleash him and let him rush, he could absolutely have a good year. But Jonathan Gannon's got to prove himself as a coordinator. He's got to do a better job.
By the way, Josh tells me that Sweat replaced Nick Bosa, who was unable to participate due to injury.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
So he did not get voted in or was not named to the Pro Bowl team
originally.
All right, so Reddick, possible. By the way, are you surprised that Reddick, for all the sacks, 23.5 over the last 2 seasons, that he's never made the Pro Bowl before?
You'd have to take a look at the edge rushers who made it, Mike, and then match it up, because there are only so many guys you could take to the Pro Bowl. And I've often said this: the Pro Bowl is too much of a popularity contest. We'll just leave Reddick to the side here. Occasionally, you'll see some guys make it who you go, this guy's not a very good football player. He clearly was. Clearly, people around the league, fans don't get to see certain players; they just go by reputation. Too many times. In fact, I'll give you a nugget here. I'm not going to name the player because I wasn't given permission to use the player's name, but there was a player I ran into at Novacare many years ago. Said, "Hey man, just curious, did you vote?" He goes, "No, man, I don't believe in this thing, man. It's rigged." And he goes, "We let the PR staff do it, man. I'll never vote for the Pro Bowl because too many guys get in who don't deserve it." I'm like, "Really? Oh, okay." I don't want to debate the guy.
Right.
This guy's a pretty good player for the Eagles. Again, he was a longtime starter. He just thought it was he didn't call it a scam, but he just thought it was too many guys get in there that don't deserve it.
All right. Well, who are some guys that could be those breakout candidates this year that we're talking about as, I don't want to say possible Pro Bowlers, but maybe some of these guys could be debated on somewhere down the line? Give me a couple of names that are on your list as breakout players for the Birds this season.
All right, so let's start with Kenny Gainwell. We actually talk about him on this past Monday's show because of Miles Sanders' situation and whether he gets extended or not after the season and what that contract would look like. Kenny Gainwell's a guy, this staff, I put this out a year ago, they really pushed hard for him. And just knowing this, and he flashed a little bit, Mike, but he still did not have the breakouts, like he was not used in the passing game like we thought. We thought he'd be used on deeper routes, not a lot of short stuff. We're expecting, at least me personally, I can't speak for Jeff, but I know we're expecting his role to be bigger. And the yards per catch is where I think they missed the staff. And I'm expecting him to have a bigger role here. So he would be my first guy on the list. He's a very talented player. Now, had he played, remember he only played he was only a starter for 1 year because he opted out in 2020. That may have a little bit to do with why they didn't quite use him as much as maybe we thought he would, because he didn't play that last year. Don't forget, he didn't play football in 2020. He was drafted last season.
I like Gainwell. It's a good one, and I agree with you. I was a little surprised that he wasn't. In fact, there were some people that were wondering, hey, can he play in the slot? That's how good of a receiver they thought he might be, and you didn't really see him kind of make that jump as a pass catcher in the offense. All right, give me another guy on the offensive side of the ball.
This guy's been on the precipice of breaking out, but he just, for whatever reason, dropped passes, injuries, Zach Ertz. Dallas Goedert never really gotten that opportunity to be the guy. Well, he's going to be the guy now because for a full season and for seasons to come. He got his extension in November of last season, within 2 weeks after Ertz was traded to the Cardinals. They would have done it last year. In fact, this time last year they had extensive talks. They broke down because the Eagles did not move him during last year's draft, where other teams were telling us that they thought the Eagles were acting like they thought they had a deal to move Ertz during the draft. It never happened. And so to move it forward, if you recall, they put the contract extension talks on hold because Ertz was still on the team to start the season, where they had made some progress. But how in the world could you create a deal knowing that Ertz is on the team? So he got moved. He got his deal, over $14 million a year. And now that he'll be clearly one of their top 3 pass targets. In fact, some weeks he'll be the number 2. A.J. Brown should be the number 1 most weeks. He's a guy who's hard to cover. Like as one Eagle source said to me, he goes, "How are you going to cover us? You can't double everybody." And Dallas Goedert is a really athletic tight end who could really block. He just has to be more consistent. I could see 70-plus catches this season.
I'm a big Goddard guy, man. I actually, at one point last year, once Ertz got traded, thought that there was a possibility he could get to 1,000 yards. I thought he would be, they didn't have a lot of options last year. So who do I go to? The tight end. I think that much of Goddard. I think you're right. I love that one in this offense. It's just, will he get enough targets? I think he will, and he should be a very fun one to watch. All right, so we all know how good the Eagles' offensive line is, but there might be a guy on that line that maybe could have a bigger year this year.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Landon Dickerson. So my understanding is from the tape study, he got off to a slow start. He was a little stiff because he was coming back from yet another major knee injury. Week 4 or 5, you started to see him turn it on, and then he became really good in the second half. I'm looking for him to potentially be a Pro Bowler. I'm going to put it out there. I think he could be a Pro Bowler this season, Mike, and it's only his second year. And let's not forget, again, he's had several bad knee injuries in his career. He was so good, I was told, that some weeks you go, the people who graded his tape were like blown away by it. Now for a full season, not having to rehab, remember now, he doesn't have to rehab. He rehabbed last year at this time. Sky's the limit for this kid, and I'm going to put him in the Pro Bowl this season. And not as an alternate, not as a replacement, actually voted in. And hopefully the people, not only the fans, but let's hope everyone who votes for it understands how talented this kid is.
Wow.
Remember, he would have been a top 20 pick without the major knee injuries. So I'm gonna say breakout season for Dickerson.
I actually, as we were talking about guys, Josh was trying to figure out who this one player was that Sports Illustrated named before he got to Reddick. We were going through, and he guessed Goddard, Smith, and I forget Mailata, because Mailata hasn't made the Pro Bowl yet.
He's kind of been as far as a Pro Bowler, yes. Oh, absolutely.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Well, we were trying to guess that, and I threw in, what about Dickerson making the Pro Bowl? I agree with you. I think Dickerson had a pretty good year last year, but being able to have the full training camp there with Mailata, those two guys, my gosh, that could be one of the more dominating left sides of the line in the game.
It's funny because the Eagles think that Mailata could actually get a lot better. It's his hand places. He sometimes gets his hands mixed up, and then if one error on a play affects everything for an offensive lineman. So he's almost there. He's like probably 65 to 70% of what he'll eventually be, where he could be. I don't know about the best left tackle. That's debatable whether he could be the best left tackle in the game, but he certainly will be one of the top 3 for years to come if he takes that next step. So yeah, I agree with you there, but he's kind of broken out already, where Dickerson is not, because he's only a second-year player, and now he's got to do it for a full season.
All right. Any other on the offensive side, or do you think there's a guy? The defense was a hard one. We were trying to figure out defensive guys. The defense is an interesting conversation.
Well, before we get to defense, you said, are there any other guys? See, Quez Watkins, because they traded for A.J. Brown, will not play as much as a third receiver. And he flashed last season. Like, he did a good job in that role that he had as a quasi-starter. But now he's going to be a backup receiver, so it's hard for me to say that. I don't trust Miles Sanders to stay healthy. He's talented. Let's face it, Mike. The guy didn't score a touchdown last season. He's sort of an enigma to me. I cannot understand why he's not better. He's super gifted. He needs to be more consistent. I'm not, if he has a monster season, you could call that a breakout. I can't predict that for this guy. I don't quite understand what the issue is with him, so I can't put him on it, and I just don't see anyone else other than Dickerson, Goddard, because he hasn't quite gotten there yet. Isaac Seumalo he should be the one up being the right guard. I just didn't see anyone else who you could possibly name there on the Eagles' offense.
All right, over on the defensive side of the ball, which is a more veteran group for the most part. Slay, he's been a guy who's been a Pro Bowler. Bradbury's been a Pro Bowler. Not that we're looking for Pro Bowlers, but more breakout players. But They have a veteran group. Graham's been a Pro Bowler. Fletcher's been a Pro Bowler. Hargrave's made a Pro Bowl. Sweat apparently made one as well. So now you're looking at linebackers and those safeties as possible candidates here. Who do you got?
Well, Josh Sweat, he isn't on my list, but let me say this about Josh Sweat. This is what we actually talked about on the show that dropped on Monday. It was actually a fun conversation. Because we're trying to figure out with Josh Sweat. Is he a Brandon Graham type, 6, 7, 8, 9 sacks? May or may not be a double-digit sack guy ever? Or is he a guy that could get 11 through 13? Because you see how long he is. He's got some of the longest arms in the National Football League. That's what really helps him. He's done an unbelievable job of coming back from one of the worst knee injuries you could think of a high school football player. He came within like inches of not only not playing football again, of really having real problems with that leg for the rest of his life. He's done an incredible job of coming back, so give him that credit. I just don't know if he's that guy, though, Mike, to be a consistent double-digit sack guy. That's the thing we're curious about. I'm not going to put him on my breakout list. He's good. I don't know that he could ever get to that elite level or very good level, but he's good. I don't put rookie linebackers on my breakout list But here's a guy that I think fits it really well. Now, this guy that I'm going to mention is on the last year of his rookie contract. They claimed him off waivers from the Vikings. It's Marcus Epps, who this is a big year for him. It is really remarkable to me. Most people probably don't realize this. This is his 4th year with the Eagles. I can't believe he's been there that long. He was claimed off waivers in November of 2019. This will be his 4th year, and this is obviously it's a contract year, Mike, for him. He's a very good, he's a good football player, not very good. He's a good football player. He's never been really a full-time starter or looked at it that way. They've never been willing to commit to him to be the guy. Well, I think Tart will be playing against Harris. By the way, he has not signed his contract. I'm told he's supposed to sign it this week. But getting back to
Tart?
Epps, yeah, he should sign it this week, I was told. He's got to take his physical. Epps is athletic. He's smart. You could play him in the box. You could play him deep. He's more of a deep safety. Gannon knows him. He's been a great story of development. We don't talk about him enough. I think he's having now. Here's the problem with trying to say a breakout player at safety, Mike. It's not so much interceptions. It's when you watch him, he makes a play on the ball. He breaks up the ball. He makes a good tackle. This is more of what our eyes tell us rather than statistics. That's the problem with the safety position. Because Anthony Harris had that 6 interception season. Mm-hmm. Well, that was an aberration. He's never done anything like that again. So you have to be careful of how you grade players at safety. And just when our eyes tell us that, wow, he made a great play, this guy could play in this league.
Yeah, I mean, Epps is going to be one of those guys who, we're hoping has a big year, mainly because, last year he played. How many percentage of the snaps would you say, ballpark figure that he got last year?
I've 53.
Yeah, so he played about half the time last year, in other words.
I have no idea. I don't have it in front of me.
Right.
You asked me for a guess. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah, he's a pretty much a wild card, I think, right? I mean, you're right. I think
it's his job. To me, based on what I've heard, I think it's going to be Harris with Tart behind him, though Tart could play free. Tart, talking to my Niners guy, he said don't discount him being able to play free because he started his career as a free safety. But because of his size and the way he hits, he's better playing deeper.
Gotcha.
But that was it. Boy, I really like that signing. It's we're told it's going to be somewhere around, when it's finished, somewhere around $2.5 million. It's similar to the Anthony Harris deal, a little bit different structure, but the end game's kind of the same.
Yeah.
I like this. Is a really good signing. The Eagles have had what's one of Roseman's best off seasons in years. The funny thing, Mike, is with the Tart signing. You remember all the crying fans had at the start of free agency? Why aren't they doing anything and all that stuff? I mean, you remember how bad it looked for the first couple of days? Look, what is Howie doing? And we actually said, boy, they better get started soon. And boy, did they get started. They've had a really good, and they didn't even get everybody they wanted, like Marcus Williams and Allen Robinson. They still did well.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. As I did say, Howie's not the most popular guy generally, but I haven't heard.
But I got to give him credit.
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot of Howie haters this summer.
Nobody wants him fired. No, it's funny because we crushed their 17 draft. I came up with the term. Someone gave it to me, so we called it the sins of the 2017 draft. I mean, Donnell Pumphrey. You could go through the whole list. It was just an abominable draft. But you have to learn from your mistakes. The last 2 drafts on paper, last year's draft definitely looks good. This one on paper, we got a ton of criticism around the league on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's pick before he even played a game. Mm-hmm. We had heard he's very limited. He could be good in the red zone. He didn't even do that. Now he's a tight end, for goodness sake. You can't keep missing. But the last 2 drafts, I mean, Howie got crushed by The Athletic in their article, which was great, by Bo Wolf and Shil Kapadia and whoever else. Zach Berman. They did a great piece. We had our own skinny on that stuff over the years, and Howie's done a good job last 2 seasons. He's got to keep it going.
Adam Caplan, don't forget the podcast drops on Thursday. They'll have a new one out, InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Listen on wherever you listen to your podcast, and check out the Inside the Birds platforms for everything this summer leading into training camp. They'll get all the details on what's going to be new for the season and training camp and all that stuff with Adam, Jeff, and Andrew is here on Thursday. We will be into the NFC previews. Jeff is back tomorrow. More football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. All right, Adam, take care, bud.
Thank you.
All right, that's Adam Caplan.